Okay, so we're here in the Maimer. There should be more in the room somewhere. There should be some more from here already. Oh, you have? Okay. So we're on page 159. Actually, 158. We finished explaining what's the reason why to have Parnassah person has to do the Gashmizdika work. We know the reason is Hashem wants everything to go through the natural order of Teva. But what's the reason for that? So the explanation is because the Parnassah we get, and any bracha we get, is really coming from Hashem's chesed. It's a chesed which is Hashem's light, Hashem's energy, which is something spiritual, it's ruchni. And in order for that to manifest into something Gashmius, it has to transform and change and evolve many levels of change from ruchnius to Gashmius. So what does it mean evolve? It means the light has to become hidden, diminished, becomes less, and then it becomes a lower light. And that becomes less, it becomes a lower light. And that becomes less, and that becomes a lower light. Ultimately, the light of Hashem has to become so hidden that it can become gashmizdika food or money or clothing or a house or whatever. So the fact that it goes through Teva hides the godliness. Teva makes it appear as if it's not Hashem. So therefore it's a concealment. And that's why is the proper conduit, the proper vessel through which Hashem's light shines into the world. Now we're on page 158, where it starts with, we're going to the third line, where it says, this concept is reflected, or the Hebrew, Zeu Shekosav Harizal. This is what the Rizal writes, a pasuk, Tzav is B'nai Yisrael. There's a pasuk in Chumash. Tzav is B'nai Yisrael, command the Yidden. So the Arizal writes that Tzav, the gematria of the word Tzav, is 96. Shehu B'chinas Shem Keil, Aleph Daled Nun Yud. We know there are many names, Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and the name Elokim, the name Tzvos. So 96 is a combination of two names. The name Keil, that's 31, and the name Aleph Daled Nun Yud, Adnai, which is Nun is 50, Yud is 60, and the Dalet is 64. The Aleph makes it 65. 65 and 31 is 96. She'el b'gematria Tzav. This is b'gematria 96. Yidu Maimer Azal. There's also a well-known comment from our sages that Ein Tzav el Avodah Zarah. That the word Tzav is related to Avodah Zarah, idol worship. So on the surface, it seems to be shocking. How could this be? Here we just finished saying that Tzav is Big Mat, the 96. There's two names of Hashem. So he says, yes, it's two names of Hashem, but it's the name of Hashem that gives life to Avodah Zarah. This refers to the false divinities. 161. P'chinas Avodah Zarah, your neck is Meshem Keil Adnai. So every morning we say the parsha, the Korban Tamid. And how did that begin? Tzav is B'nai Yisrael. Tzav. The reason why we say it is because when we say Tzav, this is the name of Hashem. And we say that name of Hashem, it's able to weaken the power of idol worship in the world. But on the surface, this is like shocking. Ma'in Avodah Zarah l'Shem Keil Adnai. Keil Adnai are two names of Hashem, holy names. Avodah Zarah is the opposite. How could you say these two names are Avodah Zarah? Every name is different because it affects the world in a different way. It also affects different worlds. The name Aleph Dalet, this name, which is a combination of Kel and Adnai, is mainly related to this physical world, Asiya. The other names are related to higher spiritual worlds. Shabai Val Yodei, through this name of Hashem, Nimshech Chayis Me'en Sof Baruch Hu Ba'olam Asiya. This is the conduit, this is the pipeline through which Hashem transmits life force and energy to the world of Asiya. And the light of Hashem that comes to this physical world has to be hidden in a very coarse, thick garment. What does it mean, coarse and thick? As if the world is on its own independent. And this is the difference between the garment of this world and all the other worlds. We know that from the world of Atzilus to go to the world of Asiya, it also goes through changes and becomes concealed. In the world of Asiya, it also becomes concealed. But in all these worlds, it's still godliness revealed. It's just less light or more light. So this will be the difference between having a light that is like 1,000 watts and it's so bright it shines for miles, or to have a light that's half of that and it shines for it only shines for 1 mile, or then a light that shines only for a few hundred yards and a light that shines for a few feet, but it's still light shining. In all the spiritual world, it's light shining. The difference is one is brighter and one is not so bright. The Gashmizdika world, the light of Hashem is not shining. When Hashem does things in this world, it appears as if it's not Hashem, as if there's some independent force called nature, and that's what's making things happen. So this is the most coarse and thick garment that has to cover Hashem's light in a complete way. This is a form of Avodah Zarah. That's what Avodah Zarah is. Avodah Zarah says it's all about me. Remember, we learned in other classes that the definition of Avodah Zarah, the previous mimer, is not what people think is Dash. Avodah Zarah means Hashem doesn't exist and they worship an idol. No. Avodah Zarah could also mean people that believe that Hashem exists, but He created certain forces, whether it be angels or other things, and they make things happen in the world independent of Hashem. That's Avodah Zarah. And the Gemara says, Korele lekodo lekaya. The Gemara says that the Goyim who don't believe in Hashem the way they should believe, they refer to Hashem as He's the God of all the gods. In other words, they all agree that Hashem created the world. And they agree that Hashem created these other gods. But Chas v'Shalom, that He made these people like gods and they have their own independent power to do things. I don't know if I mentioned it at that time, but I remember I was once giving a class. It wasn't here, it was actually in Manhattan. It was a once-a-week class, and the people there were everything was very new to them. Chassidus. I mentioned something about the Satan, and somebody jumped up and said, the Satan, that's such a Christian concept. I said, no. If you look in Gemara, we find the word Satan. In Tanakh, we find the word Satan. So how come, we always think of it as a Christian concept, they talk so much about the Satan. The difference is, we believe that Hashem created angels to do things in this world. There's an angel for fire, there's an angel for water. That Hashem created an angel that his function is to make people do Averis. And that angel is called the Satan. But the difference between us and them, so we believe there's a Satan, and they know about it also from the Torah, because it's in the Torah, it's in Tanakh. But the difference is, they say that Hashem created a Satan and now gave him the power to make things happen the way he wants it to happen. And sometimes he gets into a fight with Hashem, Chas v'Shalom. We say the Satan is Hashem doing everything, but certain things he does through Malach Gabriel, other things he does through Malach Raphael, other things he does through Malach Michael, and other things he does through the Satan, but everything that happens comes ultimately from Hashem. No angel has any power to do anything independently. So if a person prays to an angel, for example, that would be like avodah zarah. You're davening to an angel has no power to do anything. That would be like davening to a hammer that you should build me a good house. Talk to a hammer and say, please, I'm begging you, I need a house. Please build a house. And with the hammer, okay, so that means I'm stupid. But if you say like that to an angel or to any other force, it means you're not believing that Hashem is really in charge. So if a person doesn't believe in that angels are in charge, he believes nature is in charge. It's the same thing. In a certain way, you're believing that something else is in charge other than Hashem. And that is a sort of subtle form of avodah zarah. That's the point. So this name of Hashem, Keil Adnai, creates this big concealment in this world, and which allows and gives room for people to owe avodah zarah, but not avodah zarah in the literal sense, avodah zarah that I could attribute everything to nature rather than to Hashem. Sheshepa Keil Adnai Nimsheches Derech Levusha Teva. This influence of Hashem's name comes to us, but through the garment of nature. Again, what does avodah zarah mean? Yeshus, something not that Hashem doesn't exist, but something separate of Hashem. Hashem exists, but I also exist. Therefore, so even after a person asks Hashem for compassion, that Hashem should give his Parnassah. Turn the page. And this, what does it mean, Parnassah? I'm asking Hashem that his sustenance, his spiritual life and spiritual energy that's going to give me Parnassah should come to me, B'Yom Kippurim, and it should come to this physical world. Nevertheless, even though he asked for that, and the Eibishter will give it to him, Lo Sagi, it's not enough. He has to prepare the garment. And what's the garment? Shaboiv al yada levush. Shaboiv al yada yumshach hashepa mamayla basiyah. That through this garment, Hashem's bracha will come down to the world of Asiyah. But when is it? Kishila esik nochin. When he has the proper kind of arrangement in derech hateva, that according to the nature of the world, you could have Parnassah, and Israel basic zeh. Only then is it a proper garment that Hashem should give in the bracha. And Hashem, so again, we're asking for Hashem's chesed, but Hashem's chesed, it should come down, and it should go through this garment, which is my business that I set up, and that's how the bracha is going to come to me. But again, the business has to be so suitable, a person should be able to say, that I made this happen. Because it's natural for one to make so much profit with the kind of business that I set up. Being that a person could say, and it could appear that it was my work and my business, my investment that brought me this profit, now that you set up this garment, Hashem says, now I can send you your chesed, your bracha. Kikachi amida. That's the way Hashem wants it to be. Two things. Aleph and Beis, page 165. Echad, one thing is Levakish Rachmim Hashem Shishlach Chadei Elyon Baruch Hu. To ask Hashem that he should send this chesed. What am I asking? This Gashem B'zeh Ha'olam, that his chesed shouldn't only be sent to me, but it should send and reach me down here. It should be Gashmi's the Parnassah. Beis, the second thing is the Iska B'maisa Matan, when he does his business, Yichav, and he should think Shemaymin Shasheba Berichas Hashemim Kishar Nisim Agluyim. So this is the thing I mentioned yesterday. Let me say one more line. K'mei shahirid haman kiyetza. Elo sheisel levush zbarach lahalim rechosei de'esig zeh. The Rebbe gives an explanation to something which on the surface is questioned, and that is when we do the benching after eating bread. Look at page 72. So there's 4 parts to the benching. This part, the first bracha, who was the one that wrote it, was written by Moshe Rabbeinu. And that was the benching in the desert, in the Midbar. When they had the man, after they finished eating, they made this bracha. Stage 1. Then they went out of the Midbar into Eretz Yisrael. Yehoshua, he wrote the second part. What do we say? We're thanking Hashem for giving us the land of Eretz Yisrael. Yeshua. He was the Navi that took Yidden into Eretz Yisrael. The next part, which starts of Rachem Hashem Elokeinu Yisrael Amecha, Vayishalayim Yirecha, V'Altziyim Mishkan K'Veidecha, was written by David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech, about Malchus Beis David. The last part, after Bnei Yerushalayim, was written by the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. These are the same people who wrote all the brachas and the Siddur, the davening, the Shemona Esrei. But the Rebbe asked a very strong question. Why are we making this first bracha? Being that Moshe Rabbeinu composed and wrote this bracha to thank Hashem for the man, which is bread that comes from heaven, we're eating a different kind of bread that comes from the earth. So this bracha doesn't really fit for the food we're eating. It's a different kind of food. So the answer is what it says here in this mimer. What does it say in the mimer? That when we get Parnassah, it's mamish like the man. It's coming from Shemayim. The only difference is then you saw clearly it's coming from Shemayim. And now it's being camouflaged. It's going through a certain channel, and it looks like it's not coming from Shemayim. You know what a vanquilatrus is? I don't know what it would be in Hebrew, but a vanquilatrus is a person that he could be sitting on a chair, and next to him there's another person sitting there. And it's not really a person, it's a sort of a doll, looks like a regular person. He's speaking, and it looks as if the other person is speaking. They can have a whole conversation. He asks him a question, he gives him an answer. So those who don't understand look and they think that this person is speaking, but really this one that's speaking, he's speaking. And it makes it sound as if he's the one who's speaking. So basically, when we get Parnassah, it's really coming from Hashem, but Hashem is taking it this way, and therefore it goes, the bracha goes into the ground, and the bracha comes out of the wheat that grows, or the other things that grow, the trees, the fruits, the apples, the peaches, the plums, or the whatever comes out of the ground. But it's the same bracha of Hashem, it just comes to us in a different way. So therefore, we make the bracha of the man, in fact, to remind ourselves, remember, the food you're getting now is no different than the food that we got in the Midbar with the man. It's only being camouflaged, it's only going through a different route, but it's the same bracha. This is Hashem's will, that the world should be in a way that everything is hidden. Ad eis kates hayomin, until the end of days, which means until Mashiach comes. What does it say? Toitzi eretz gluskois, that the earth will produce ready-made pastries, which means that out of the earth will come out a cake, bread. You won't have to process anything.
Organic cake, huh?
The truth is, the way we grew up in this country, in this generation, if you would ask a kid who's 7-year-old, 8 years old, where does bread come from? I'll tell you from the bakery. It's as if it grows on the shelf, bread. And then you tell them, there's a thing called a field. and there's wheat, and they take the wheat and they grind it and they make it flour. That's like a fascinating story to them. And it's a trip. They take them down to a field and they show them how they make it. But it appears as if it just comes out of the bakery. That's what happens. You buy it in the bakery. So also love it, it'll actually be like that. The earth will produce ready-made food. That's a miracle. That you don't have to do the normal, regular process. Rabbi Yeshua also says this in Gemara. Yarba be'esek, a person must do two things. If he wants to make more money, he should invest more money and he should ask Hashem. Because one without the other is not good enough. Which means, good morning, Leah. If he invests more money, he doesn't ask Hashem for more Parnassah. Or if he asks Hashem for more Parnassah and doesn't invest more money, then it won't happen. Because how can you make more money if you're investing less? And in order to make more money, this kind of money, you have to invest more. So if I invest more, I'm still not finished. I have to ask Hashem because really, ultimately, He's going to give the bracha. And here there's a parenthesis for the Tzemach Tzedek. When it says here that he wants to make more money, he should add more money in his business, that's Lanisha Reitzel Lahashir. It's talking about a person who has this desire to become rich. There are such people around. They have a desire to become rich. What? Somewhere far out there. What does it mean if he asks for a lot of money? Person who prays, I want to be a millionaire, a billionaire. Really what he's saying is, he's asking Hashem. We learned before that when Hashem gives us chesed, it's measured. Every person gets a ton of chesed, 2 tons of chesed, 3 tons of chesed. He wants that most of the chesed that he's getting should be in money. So therefore, if he wants that, he has to increase his business activity. The hach and the bushim gedolim has to provide bigger garments. So again, like we mentioned before, if I have a business where I'm investing money that Al Pi Teva could only produce $1,000 a month, and I want to earn $100,000 a month, it's not going to happen unless I invest more money or do a different kind of business. But generally he's saying and actually advising people shouldn't be like having this burning desire to become wealthy. He just wants to have the money that he needs to provide Parnassah for himself, for his family. They should have all the basics that they need. And as I'll explain in the future, he only has to do it in a regular, measured way. And even a person who has that urge that he wants to become wealthy, it won't help anything, no matter what he does in business, how many hours he'll work, and how much money he'll invest, and how many courses he'll take. It's not going to help him. Ella and Cain, the Vakish Rachim Hashem, but ask Hashem, Sheyishtav Yashpilai Rub Chesed Elya Shenitzil Nashi Bashiras. He's going to ask Hashem that the chesed you give me, please direct it mostly to money. That's what I want. But you must know how to ask Hashem for such a thing. The way we should conduct ourselves is not like that. Because by doing that, in a sense, you don't know what you're giving up. If somebody tells Hashem, I want money, but you don't know what you're losing in terms of chesed, maybe in other areas of life. Most people, they don't, chas v'sholom, the word mafkir is like the word hefker. They don't relinquish, give up. The vakish and ask Hashem that all the chesed should go just for money. He doesn't really ask for that. So this person is a little bit of work, he's going to bring a little bit of profit. being that Hashem did not designate more for that person, then therefore, no matter what he does, it's not going to make a difference. And here it goes to that story that I mentioned in the beginning, page 169. It's not too common, not so usual to find a story in a mimer. The story of the Baal Shem Tov is Shabbat Elav Adam Chashuv Bonim. Person came to him who was childless, but this person had wealth. He was wealthy. She yispal Hashem Shile Bonim V'Hay Adam Asher. V'Amalei the Baal Shem Tov said to him, Im Yitzeh Shi Ani Yile Bonim. If he's ready to be poor, then he can do and daven him that he should have children. The the man accepted it upon himself. And he actually had children. That Hashem told him. But Nasa Ani, he also became poor. What's the connection? Why do I have to lose a bracha to get another bracha? Baal Shem Tov saw what's going on up there. And he saw that chelik ha-chesed she-niktzeb al-mafshei she-yamshichu be'elamazeh, the amount of chesed that he has, if that chesed comes down to this world, lo yaspik, it's not enough for children and for wealth. Only for one of them. And that's what Rosh Hashanah accomplished. Apparently, to accomplish that, she had more chesed, and he wasn't able to. But what he was able to do was to exchange that instead of the chesed should go for the money, it should go for children. And as the person, if he's willing to accept that change. Just an example, even though there are many examples, but there's a story with the Rebbe Rashab. There was once a group of Chassidim, they were traveling to Lubavitch, and they were on a train together, and somebody walks over to them and says, "Are you going to Lubavitch? You're Lubavitch Chassidim?" Yeah. So they said, well, the guy said to them, "I'll tell you an interesting story with your Rebbe that happened to me." And he says to them that he owned a factory that manufactured matches. This is with the Rebbe Rashab. And one day, a fire broke out. Okay, try to think what happens when there's a fire in a match factory. The place gets burned down in no time. I guess in those days there was no, there was no, or he didn't have fire insurance. Probably there was no such thing in those days. And basically he lost everything. He lost everything. He couldn't even pay rent. So they moved out of their apartment and they moved back into his wife's parents' house. They lived there until they can get themselves back on their feet. And they were having a hard time finding some new source of Parnassah. So he came to the Rebbe Rashab. I forgot what city it was that he lived in. It was a bigger city. He came to the Rebbe Rashab. Someone advised him he should go to the, he's not a Lubavitcher Chassid, but someone advised him, why don't you ask the Lubavitcher Rebbe? Apparently his city was not far from Lubavitch. So he came to the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab said, I think you should open a hat store, sell hats. He never dealt with hats. Why would the Rebbe tell him a hat store? Okay. And the Rebbe told him, I think you should open up your business in this city. So he told the Rebbe Rashab, if I open up a hat store, I can open up in this city. It's easier here. My wife's parents live here, and it's a much bigger city than that city. It's a small place. The Rebbe Rashab said, and I think you should open up there. Okay. Obviously, he listened, and he went to that place with his wife. They opened up a store in a small little place, and nobody's coming in to buy a hat. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. They started to feel bad and think to themselves, maybe he wasn't so smart to follow the Rebbe's advice. One day, this fancy-looking guy walks in, looks around. Turned out he was a nobleman, and he liked one of his hats. He bought the hat, and then he says to him, mind me asking, but you look sad, like, I'm a nobleman and I have a lot of things that I can maybe do. Is there any way that I can help you? No. Well, tell me, maybe I can help you. Listen, I do have a lot of opportunity here. Is anything that I can connections? What do you need? So he told him the story that he owned a match factory, and what happened with the factory, and then he went to a rabbi. The rabbi suggested open up in this town, and you're the first customer that came in, and who knows how long. So he says, it's interesting that you tell me that you own a match factory. Why? So my brother also owns a match factory, and one of the machines just broke. And that machine broke. Every day that goes by, they can't manufacture matches. And every day they're having tremendous losses. They brought mechanics, nobody could fix it. Maybe you should go down. You own the match factory, you probably know something. Maybe you can go down and try. He says, no, I own the match factory. I'm not a mechanic. I didn't deal with the mechanics, with the machines. I dealt with the business part. But still, listen, it can't hurt. You worked at a match factory. Maybe you know something. I'll give you a ticket to travel to my brother. Tell him that I sent you and try and see what happens. Anyway, he went down that place. Took a day or two. He was trying different things with the machines, and he fixed it. The brother was in seventh heaven. First of all, he gave him a lot of money, paid him for the work that he did. And then he said, you know what? I need a manager here. You want to be a manager in this factory, a match factory? And he offered him a very big salary, and he took the job. And he realized that the Rebbe Rashab sent him to that town, so he should meet this person who would send him to the match factory, and eventually it'll lead to his Parnassah. That means really it was a bracha from Shemayim, clearly. But look how the bracha came. The Rebbe could have said, go to this guy and apply for a job to be a manager in his factory. But obviously that would be a miracle, out of nowhere. So you don't open a hat store. It looks like it's a regular business. It looks like random somebody happened to walk in. And random coincidence, he has a brother who also had a match factory and had a fire. But really it's all Mamaila. And all this is happening just to camouflage the bracha. It should look totally like it's Al Pi Teva. And guess what? There are some people that would say, yeah, maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe the Rebbe just gave me advice, but really, it just worked out. I mean, if you open your eyes, you see clearly, why would the Rebbe tell me to go to this remote little place if I could have done that in a big city? Clearly, the Rebbe saw my bracha is going to come through this channel. That we live in a different world today with all the work of the Rebbe, of Parnassah Mayones, and Shluchim, and Shlichus. But years ago, there was also things like that, but in a much more different, a different kind of setting. It was more open. Well, Shem Tov would send people to do things in a more miraculous way. But it's a story with the Alter Rebbe. It's a long story. It's a beautiful story with a lot of details. It would take a long time to tell the story. I don't know if you know, I have a series on recordings of stories of older Rebbeim. Today it's Baruch Hashem, without me knowing what it is, but my kids, they put it on a thing called Spotify. And you know, you hear the stories of the Alter Rebbe, Mittel Rebbe, the history of older Rebbeim. So this is one of the stories with the Alter Rebbe and the Mittel Rebbe. It's a long, beautiful story written by the Frierdiker Rebbe. And it's about a sefer that the Mittel Rebbe wrote. And he wrote it in Yiddish, very unusual. And it's about Tshuva. So he writes what's the origin, what's the background to why he wrote this book about Tshuva. And it's a story about a person who became about Tshuva. And it's a long story about an individual who was actually from a frum home. Then he had non-Jewish friends, and eventually he went away from Yiddishkeit. He married someone who was not Jewish. But this woman wasn't an ordinary woman. She was the daughter of a very big nobleman. And through this person, how did he come to do Tshuva? So what happened was that this is a chassid, his name was Rabbi Yosef Balagola. Rabbi Yosef, the wagon driver, that's what they called him. Really, he wasn't a wagon driver. He was a big mashpia. He was a big chassid. He davened like a chassid. He had vast knowledge of Torah. He gave shiurim in Torah. And I forgot, I think at age 60, his wife passed away. He came to Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe told him, he really told him the future. He said that when you get back home, you'll be offered a shidduch, and you should take that shidduch. So he remarried. Then the Alter Rebbe said some very strange words to him. And he said to him, that if you're offered a position of becoming a Rav, don't accept the position. For the benefit of your neshama, you should become a wagon driver. It's hard to explain, but it looks like a wagon driver in those days was like the lowest class kind of job you can possibly have. That's the way it was. I don't know what to compare it to today. What?
Maybe a cab driver.
Not a cab driver, maybe a truck driver. Yeah, it's a different kind of life. They were usually low class, simple people, not bad, just simple and lower class people. And when the time came, he was beside himself. Oh, what happened was actually a group of people came and they offered him a position as a Rav. And he remembered the Alter Rebbe said, don't accept that position. But then he thought to himself, but then the second part is applicable now. The Alter Rebbe told me to become a wagon driver. Trying to imagine I'm going to become a wagon driver. Doesn't make any sense. It's like, how could I become a wagon driver? It's like, so it doesn't fit what I'm like walking down the street in pajamas. It doesn't make any sense. Went through a lot back and forth. It's very beautiful to what's going on in his head, the thoughts, why yes, why not. At the end, it was his wife who encouraged him to listen to Alter Rebbe, become physically a wagon driver. Became a wagon driver, and I think he was a wagon driver for 10 years in this old age. And one time he was at an inn, and somebody in that inn, this person who we're talking about, he was in the inn, and he needed to go somewhere. So he walked over to arrange a trip with him, and he said, I can't go that early. I have to daven, I have to, do all my things, and then I'll go. And that person who was actually a Jew, but who became far from Yiddishkeit, was very angry, said, forget it, I'm not using you, I'm going to get a different wagon driver. In the middle of the night, this chassid got up after midnight and started saying Tikkur Chatzos. He was saying davening and singing and crying, and he heard in the other room, and it touched his heart. And at the end of the story, he became very sick, and then he got better, and he became a Baal Tshuva. Through him, he became a Baal Tshuva. A few months later, when this chassid came, the Alter Rebbe was now nostalgic, and the Mitzvah Rebbe became the new Rebbe. He came to Lubavitch, the Mitzvah Rebbe, and when he came to Lubavitch, he was shocked to see this person was also there. Oh, so obviously the person somehow got involved with Chabad, with Lubavitch. He went into the Mitzvah Rebbe, and the Mitzvah Rebbe said that my father said you can go back to becoming a mashpia. And then he said, for the benefit of this one neshama, Hashem, my father took a mashpia and turned him a wagon driver. And I'm going to take a wagon driver and turn him back into a mashpia. So in other words, for 10 years, he didn't do his regular seder of davening and learning and all those things the way he used to do, because he was busy as a wagon driver. I mean, if he was supposed to elevate this neshama, the Alter Rebbe could have said, pick yourself up, go to that inn, and this neshama is yours. Just go zoom, and he'll become a Baal Tshuva. No, I had to follow some sort of a natural order. He became a wagon driver, did all the things a wagon driver does. Then he ended up in this shtetl. This guy needed a ride, and one thing led to another, and eventually he became Baal Tshuva, which means it's clearly heavenly. The Alter Rebbe knew about this years before, but nevertheless, it went through this path, which made it look as it was totally random, and it followed a natural order. That's how everything in life is. And our job is to open our eyes when something happens and to realize that this is from Hashem. It's just coming through this channel. That's all. Okay, so we're going to stop here at on page 168. We're getting closer to the end. Almost finished with the mimer. Okay. Have a great day, everybody.